Hey everybody, it's Sophie and Marco dish out on the movies, and we are still on Alfred Hitchcock week, and it is time to review Lifeboat. I would say this is one of my all-time favorite movies now, after watching it for the I don't know how many time. I haven't watched
Third
it in
time?
years.
You said you went to see it twice.
I didn't go to see it. It came out way
Or you,
before.
you watched it twice and now you watched it again, so three.
Maybe this third time. I don't know, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. So Uh, it was released on January 28th, 1944, and based on a novella by John Steinbeck. It stars Tallulah Bankhead as Constance Parker, William Bendix as Gus Smith, John Hodiak as John Kovac, Walter Slezak as Willie, Hume Cronin as Stanley, or Sparks, Mary Anderson as Alice Mackenzie, Canada Lee as George, Henry Hole as C.J. Rittenhouse Jr., and Heather Angel as Mrs. Higgins. Here is a brief summary of the movie. A passenger ship on the way to London and a German U-boat have blown each other up. All we see is the final explosion and what is floating on the water, like a checkerboard or chessboard, other miscellaneous wooden debris, and a fully intact copy of the New Yorker magazine, which is a nice surprise since I take that. Then you see a lifeboat with one woman on it, Constance Parker, a famous journalist, wearing a crisp and clean dark skirt and a light-colored blouse covered up by her luscious mink coat.
Ooh.
On her wrist, she wears a beautiful jewel-encrusted bracelet that she says her ex-husband gave her, which will play into a brief storyline later in the movie. She's holding an expensive camera and has been taking photos of the ship sinking and people trying to save themselves. Kovac, a member of the crew, joins her, and then it's Sparks, a radio operator who had been on the ship. In helping Sparks aboard, Kovac knocks Constance's camera into the water. It's C.J. Rittenhouse, the multimillionaire, a war nurse named Alice, and Gus, a crew member whose job it was to stoke the fire in the engine room and had been shot in the leg. Next. After tending to Gus's leg wound and removing the bullets, George, an African American crew member, swam up with a woman named Mrs. Higgins and her baby. Alice immediately took the baby and discovered it was dead. After everyone settled in, Willie, a German soldier, needed rescuing. Kovac doesn't trust him at all, but the rest are a little more amenable. He appears to speak only German, and Constance is able to translate for him because she is a fluent German speaker. For the most part, everyone gets along. Constance and C.J. Rittenhouse seem to be friends from New York. On the other hand, she thinks Kovac is a heathen or a brute and just barely tolerates him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Higgins realizes her baby is dead, and while she's asleep, they throw the baby overboard and have a brief funeral in which George speaks the words to the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd," and so on.
You done giving away the movie?
When Mrs. Higgins discovers her baby is gone, they have to tie her to a chair. However, during the night, she jumps ship.
Okay, keep giving away the movie. People don't need to see it.
Willie tells them to head to Bermuda and which way to go. What they don't know is that he is carrying a compass and is leading them to a German supply boat. They vote to trust him, even though Kovac was against it and George abstained.
Keep going. People don't need to see the movie.
Marco, they begin to run low on food and water, But the situation becomes worse after enduring two storms. And of course, compounding these basic survival issues are the presence of a German soldier and the worsening of Gus's leg wound. It makes for a hellish kind of existence for all of them. Okay, Marco.
Okay, now that Sophie's done giving away the movie.
Yeah, right.
Uh, hmm.
Well, why the movie was made, Hume Cronin's injuries, why people and our critics didn't like it, and
No,
what.
I'm gonna talk about the movie.
Okay.
So I thought the movie was really good. I wasn't expecting to like it because I had just gotten off of Vertigo, and that movie was disappointing. Not that it was a bad movie; it was just disappointing. So, but I was excited about this one because the plot sounded interesting, and it sounded like something that that could only be done by Hitchcock, and I was pleasantly surprised. It it's one of those old movies that's really good like usual. Has a lot of great dialogue. Everybody in the cast plays an important part. There's nobody that's just there like in these modern movies where you have people and they're just there for like 3 minutes and they're not important. But people are like, "Oh yeah, look at those cool people." And in this movie, everybody plays a part, which is important. Even the people at the end and the people in other places who might not be through the whole movie, they still play a part and are very interesting. The villain in this movie is everybody's problem, apparently, back then, because he's German and he's smart. I'm not kidding. That was literally the reason why people said don't see it, is because the villain is smart, which is ridiculous, right, Sophie?
Yes, it is. Because who said a villain is a dumb?
Just because he's German means he can't be smart. So that basically they're saying, I mean, these are the same people who talk today about having strong female characters and all that bullshit. That back then they're like, oh, because he's German, we want him to be a stereotypical loser, like a goofball. We don't want him to have a character because he's a German guy. And I really like him. He's one of the better villains in a Hitchcock movie, a lot better than the Vertigo villain who just shows up a couple of times and then leaves forever and
Yeah, really.
gets away with it.
At the beginning for a little bit, the middle a little bit, at the end a little tiny bit. Well, no, wait, he wasn't even there at the end. So really at the beginning and the middle.
Yeah, and that's it. What do you have to say about this movie, Sophie?
Well, I thought you could talk about the cameo.
No.
You don't want to talk about the cameo?
I want to talk about the movie.
Well, that's always part of his movies. That was what he was famous for. It's kind of like what Stephen King does in his movies too. He tries to make a cameo, but I don't think it's like Hitchcock. He hasn't been in every single thing, but Hitchcock, I think, tried to do a cameo in all of his movies. And this is a little bit different because in the other movies they're in a city or somewhere where he could walk by or walk in a building or could be seen in an upstairs window or something. And this time all there was in the movie, the whole movie, just centered around this lifeboat, which I don't know how big it is, but it's a very small space for all of these people. All of the people except for the lady who threw herself overboard at the beginning, the one who had the little child. And but everybody else, they all had to work. They had to get along, or they whatever, and go through storms and just and how to manage the German and if they needed to manage him. And
If you want to know the most intelligent person in the movie, honestly, it's Hodiak.
Kovac.
Hodiak is the actor.
Oh, yeah, which is weird. They rhyme.
He's the most intelligent person in the movie. I'm not going to say why because it'll. Well, it's because he doesn't trust the German guy.
He never trusts him from the beginning until the end, even when everybody else.
He says on multiple occasions to get rid of him, and of course nobody listens to him, and look what happens. Bad stuff happens. And you're very surprised that they get out of it. It's not because Hitchcock. We were adding more things to the bingo, and Hitchcock, what he likes to do is put the heroes in very tough situations that you wouldn't think they'd get out of, and yet they do, and that's one of these movies. Right, Sophie? You're not saying anything.
Yes, Marco.
This is your review too.
Oh, I know. I just said a whole lot.
You revealed most of the movie.
No, I didn't. Not at all.
You're reading from the script. You're not even saying anything about the movie.
I really loved the movie, which I said at the very beginning, and I think it's one of my favorite all-time movies, along with Rear Window, which is interesting because they're both Alfred Hitchcock movies. And the reason why I like the way he looks at everybody and talks about everybody. He just doesn't talk about a certain type of character. He looks at a whole montage of people and how they live and what they think about and how they interact. And really, it's a very simple story. And everything takes place, like I said, in one boat. And not a big boat, but a lifeboat. And I think as far as like filming everything, and I'm not a big movie making person like Marco is, but I mean the storms and all the camera work and they still, like I talked about in Vertigo, he did do a couple of things with the faces. I wrote down at the end, he for the bingo, for the Alfred Hitchcock bingo card, horrified faces, a crying face, a close situation where people barely make it out alive, which is what Marco brought up. And not as much as like in Vertigo when they showed Jimmy Stewart's face and they like took off the head and they blew it up and then they made it go turn red.
Yeah, that was really funny when his head's just floating around.
And then I don't know how to explain it. Go expand out, expand in, expand out, and go in, and over, and just like you're having a delusion or you're having a bad dream or a nightmare. It was more just like a simple close-up of people's faces, woman's crying, people with horrified expressions. I mean, horrified turning into anger. It was really, that's another thing about him, the way he captures emotions in people's faces. And I wonder if there was much direction in that. In other words, he might have said, now you have to look horrified, and then they all would look horrified, and then if he had to really tell them, well, no, really look horrified, like, and, really, like, what it would really mean to them, if he had to give them much direction, if it took that much, because it was really good, just people's expressions. So, but that's kind of characteristic of his direction and his movies. Faces, which I said in the very first, in Vertigo. So, but it wasn't as many in Vertigo. They had a lot more close-ups, but there weren't as many, but it still was good, and it was Alfred Hitchcock-like. So
it was a journey to get through the whole movie. There's a lot of different changes that happen. There's one storm in the movie that really aggravates things worse than they already need to be aggravated, which is cool because you that they're already dealing with something at the same time there's a storm, and usually in movies it would just be there's a storm and that's it. There wouldn't be another thing with the storm. And so, but there was one question that we had: why did the German and we know that he probably had gangrene, but was the Germans' motivations to help him so to gain their trust, or was it because he was the only actual worker who's worked on a boat before, and he wanted to disable him in the best way possible by cutting off his leg?
Well, that was Gus, the character. His name was Gus. He had been the one that they had brought aboard. The nurse and C.J. Rittenhouse had brought aboard. He'd had a leg wound because he'd been shot, and right after they brought him aboard, they took out those bullets, and they didn't really have any kind of bandages or anything clean. All they had was like some alcohol. Somebody had a bottle of alcohol, but it wasn't plain alcohol. It had flavor in it, so really it wasn't. It had something. It's not really clean. And
and so why does he cut off his leg? I already said that I know that he has it. I'm saying why did he want to do it? Was it to gain their trust? Excuse me. Was it to gain their trust, or was it to disable the only ship worker on there?
yeah, but their Sparks he was a person in the radio. He was a radio operator.
That's not very important. I mean, you're missing the point here.
Now, I know what you're saying, but he also worked on the boat.
That doesn't matter.
And those other two, I thought George and Kovac
he's
did
not
too.
He's not the strongest guy either. We're talking about the strongest guy here. And so why did he cut off his leg? Was it to gain their trust, or was it to disable him so that he would be easier to kill?
Well, he's a soldier in wartime, and I guess you have to think the worst. But it didn't matter, because if he had gangrene, he's going to be disabled anyway. He's going to die.
Yeah, but what was his motivation?
The only motivation I could think is that it would be to gain the trust of others, that he was trying to do the right thing. But it's hard to think that a soldier in wartime would be doing the right thing for anybody other than himself and other Germans. So it's really hard to.
He was very
say.
cutthroat villain. In fact,
Yeah, he was very. I mean, he sang songs and he was very pleasant, but really he was diabolical.
it was funny because there's a really creepy scene in the movie where there's just like a close-up of his face, and he's sitting there singing and rowing the boat, and you know why he's singing is because he's glad that he's gonna get them to a concentration camp and take them there, and so they can suffer to death, and he's telling them there's gonna be food on the boat. And like, yeah, not for them.
Yeah.
There's gonna be food for the German people, but not food for anybody else. And another thing that I wanted to bring up, which is a very good point, I think, is that he thinks that he's the master race. Obviously,
Well,
because he's gonna take
Germans are better than anybody.
Yeah, because he's gonna take them to a camp so they can die. yet he reveals through in the climax of the movie, spoiler alert, he reveals that he's been not only taking energy pills, but he's also been taking food tablets and drinking water that only he's had. So, since he's the master race, why does he have to put himself on a higher playing field than everybody else there? You know what I mean? Like everybody else is starving, and yet he has to have food. He has to have this in order to even function.
So you're saying that if he's a master race, he doesn't need all that stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Because that's a contradiction.
Because he's not the master race at all. In
He's
fact,
a human being.
He's a
just like anybody else.
He's an inferior race. His character. He's an inferior person because he has to put himself above everybody in order to be stronger than them. By taking it would be the exact same thing as if you're in prison, or no, if you're in I don't know what comparison you make, but just taking steroids and then saying that you're already born superior to somebody is just really weird. The ending was really good. The ending was one of the best parts. Do you agree, Safi?
It was a really good part. I think Constance, who's Tallulah Bankhead, she gives two really good speeches in the movie. One was, I won't say what the other one was, but one is to convince Gus that he needs his leg to be cut off. And Gus is wanting to go home eventually after the war or whenever to be with his fiance or his girlfriend or whatever. I think maybe just his girlfriend. She's a dancer and loves to dance, and so if he gets his leg cut off, he's going to have trouble dancing. And so it takes a lot to convince him, and it's a really good speech. And then she gives another one, and then actually one of my favorite quotes, which is interesting because nowadays a lot of people get tats. And she says that Kovac has quite a few tats on his chest, and she said, "I never understood turning a person's torso into a billboard," which I thought it was funny. A really good quote. And then she gives another speech near the end, which is really good. And it wasn't even much. Actually, it was probably a third or a fourth of long of what the one she gave to Gus to convince him to get his leg cut off. But I really liked those speeches. And
well, it was good that she was able to motivate everybody. When she was talking to Gus, she was really like faking it to make him like convinced. Like she was really trying her hardest.
because she didn't care for it either, really.
Yeah. And it's funny too because this is a female character in the 1940s, and her character is a better character than any of the female characters in any movie or TV show in the past like decade. Because I mean, you'd think the opposite. You'd think that because nowadays you have all this bullshit feminism propaganda everywhere, that there'd be at least one good female character, but there's really not. It's really in this movie. She's like the star of the movie, and she's smarter than most of the other people there. Well, she's not smarter, but she knows that they all have to work together. And
well, another thing
it's pretty surprising.
she's a writer, so she knows how words and how to use them effectively. So that plays some of the part in her being able to give good speeches to get people motivated to do what they needed to do. So, are we ready to?
And another thing, we were going to talk about the mink coat issue. Would you like to say it? Would you like to describe it?
Well,
the mink coat dilemma.
She came. That's what I was saying. When you first see a person on a boat, the lifeboat, it's her, and her clothes. There's not a spot at first. There's not a spot of dirt. She's perfectly decked out. She's wearing a mink coat, and she has a typewriter. She has a camera. She has this bracelet.
And she
and all
loses
these
everything,
jewels.
which is cool.
She loses everything, she has everything. Everything's perfect. It's like she was able to gather. I mean, these people are running for their lives. The boat's sinking. It's been blown up, and she's got everything with her on the boat. I don't even know how that even. And she was all by herself. I had no idea how that would work. But
she got into the only lifeboat left.
Oh, yeah.
The other ones were blown up. So
but
she just climbed aboard with her stuff.
And she had everything. So, and back in those days, women wore mink coats. That's what they did. And nowadays, if you got caught wearing any kind of fur coat in public, you'd probably be stoned, or you would have eggs thrown at you. Who knows what people would do? I don't know if in a small town or...
You still haven't described the mink coat dilemma.
Well, I'll let Marco do that because he has a perfect memory for situations.
You sure?
Well, what happened was, I told you, they brought this lady, Mrs. Higgins, aboard with her baby, and she was just devastated, and they put the mink coat on her. Now you can say, and because they were trying to because she was in shock and devastated too when she found out the baby died, and when it was gone, they threw it overboard, and they put the mink coat on her, and then you can just say what happens next.
Well, it's just the fact that she's so angry at the German guy for killing her baby. Well, indirectly killing her baby.
Yeah, he was on board the U-boat, which bombed them, and they got them back. Because remember, their boat, their submarine sank too. So.
And she's mad at him, but then she's cuddling this coat and stroking it, and asking if it's real mink. So she's okay with wearing like 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8 baby animals worth that were killed to make her a coat, but she's not okay with her one baby getting indirectly killed by the enemy forces in a war. It's pretty funny.
Well, Marco's saying there's hypocrisy in that, but I mean, somebody's own baby, if you're a mother, is not comparable to...
Yeah, it is.
Well, if you were a mother, you wouldn't think that. But
7 to 8 animals.
Well, I don't like it either, but I'm telling you that if you're a mother and you've lost your baby, and she just wasn't in her right mind at all. And I don't think back then, even if she was in her right mind, even that other woman wearing that coat, the journalist, they didn't think about that little baby animals were killed to make coats like that.
Yeah,
they just looked at it as they looked at it as
did.
I don't think so.
She said, "Is it real?" Basically saying, "We're is this really dead animals that make up my coat?" Cool.
Well, I still don't think that they really thought about it.
I just think that you're giving them an excuse.
Well, I'm just telling you. I'm thinking about another movie. It's a Christmas movie where, geez, I wish I could think of it. the woman is she just bought a mink coat, and with her raise in salary or something, and then she's about to lose her job because she's discovered to be a fraud, and that's, I mean, it's another thing is in that day and age they were important. It was like
It doesn't matter.
It was like a status
What matters
symbol.
is the situation in the movie that we're talking about right now. The situation that I just described.
Well, I know that.
Where she's okay with 7 to 8 baby animals getting killed so that she can look fashionable and feel comfortable in a lifeboat where nobody is supposed to be comfortable. But then she's getting mad at the enemy forces in a war that they're currently fighting for doing his job, which is to kill the opposite side.
I just think her emotions had overcome her in a way that, and I don't even know though if she had not lost her baby, the baby was fine. If she still, she would still be, she would still have the attitude about the coat.
In fact, that would be a good question to ask Mr. Hitchcock. What do you think? Because you have to think he made her character say that line. Is this real? Like, is this real? Like,
I don't
she
know
really
what else
wants
it would
to
be.
real.
And I don't know what else it would be back then anyway.
Fake. And
fake what?
Fake.
They didn't do that. I don't think they did.
I think they did so that people could afford it and they could look fashionable.
I don't know. It was a big status symbol for women then, and I just don't think they realized or sat down to think what it cost. Not cost in terms of money, but what it cost in terms of animals being slaughtered.
Well, that's why I'm saying
make those beautiful looking coats.
It'd be interesting to ask him if that's what he meant by that, and if he had thought about that when he's writing it.
I doubt it.
He put those specific. Oh God.
I don't think so. So okay, well,
I think so.
Is there anything else?
What are some other things about the movie?
Well, I thought the cameo was interesting, but you won't talk about it. Maybe you don't want to give it away.
Now we'll talk about it. The cameo, I was very surprised.
Well, it was very clever, I thought.
It was
I didn't even notice it. And I didn't notice it. I've never noticed it. This is the very first time I've ever seen this.
There was one, and at first I thought that he was deliberate. Okay, this is what it is. It's supposed to be a fake weight loss drug advertiser, and it has one picture of Alfred Hitchcock before and then after. And I thought that in the before picture he was deliberately like bulging forward to stick out his stomach, but no, that was actually what he looked like.
Well, what happened was in the beginning of the movie when they were first aboard the boat, I think C.J. Rittenhouse, maybe it was him reading the newspaper. Somebody had the newspaper, probably the journalist, because she had all that other crap. And he was looking at it, and you peer over at the newspaper, and there's this big weight loss ad, and it's Alfred Hitchcock. And there's a before and after picture, before when he was very heavy, and then after when he had taken this drug, which is just in the advertisement. It's a fake advertisement. And I thought you said that he had recently lost like 50 pounds before the movie was made, and he was very proud of it, and he wanted to, and he always makes a cameo, so he decided to incorporate himself into an ad in the fake ad in a fake paper that showed his weight loss. I thought that's very clever, because here he made a cameo without even being on board the ship in person, which on all the other movies he'd done, he did make a cameo. He did show himself. Was he in Psycho?
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, he was. He walked across the street. A very minimal cameo, very uninteresting cameo.
Well, this was, I'd say, a very interesting cameo.
Ah! Excuse me.
Okay, so I think let's see what else.
Something happened in the background. Now it's time to review it. Okay, so
Oh, well, I think we should say too that a couple of the actors on board the boat, because they are to do these storms. Well, the second one was worse than the first. That they had to undergo a lot of physicality in acting, and that actually one of them broke their ribs and got pneumonia, and another one of the actors also got pneumonia. So it was a lot of work to do this movie, although it took place in one boat. So okay, so why don't we review it now?
do you remember what review I was gonna give it?
No,
Okay.
because I think you had different things.
Well, I was thinking hard about it.
Want me to do mine first?
Yeah, you do yours first.
Okay, well
Damn it.
since I liked the movie so much, and that's really nice too, because sometimes I've gone back to watch a movie I've watched a while back, and
Like
it wasn't.
Vertigo.
No, Marco, not Vertigo, and it was I would not like the movie as much.
Clockwork Orange.
No, Marco, and but this movie, it was like a pleasant surprise. I did like it a lot before, and now I know why. And I gave it a full meal, a perfectly cooked steak with a nice salad and a baked potato, with a slice of tiramisu for dessert. And I think Lifeboat is a movie where 100% of it was shot in the lifeboat, where Hitchcock managed to fit in a few surprises to get you to like the movie even more. That's why I gave the movie one of my favorite desserts as well as a full meal. So that's my review of the movie. And I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. And it's just interesting that it's an old movie. It's not a brand new movie, but it's just really well done and interesting.
Good dialogue for once.
Yeah, well,
Not everything's a joke, like in cough cough Marvel movies. Cough cough.
This isn't a cartoon movie, and you should say why he did the movie.
No, I'm not gonna say that.
You're not going to say that.
No.
Okay. Well, so anyway, I thought it was a very well done movie. I really enjoyed it, and I recommend it highly. So.
Review this movie. A nice big bowl of chili with lots of spice and lots of meat and maybe a little dusting of cheese on top, like in the middle. Just a little bit of cheese. And to drink, have a glass of green apple Izzy, and then for dessert have a slice of lemon fudge cake.
Ew, that sounds gross.
I don't care. I just came up with that. The chili represents how meaty the movie is, how meaty the villain is. There's so many different components with all different people playing a part. The drink. What did I say? Green apple.
Yep.
That's because of the gangrene. Get it? Gangrene, green apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever. It's
silly.
But also because the drink represents the villain. Because he's very smart, and an apple a day makes you smarter, and I don't know. It's very hard. Making everything represent something is very hard. And then the dessert would be the ending, because the ending is very satisfying and left you feeling like you don't need any more, which is another problem with a lot of these movies made nowadays. That you watch like a 2 hour movie and you feel like you could watch 3 more hours because it leaves so much room for more. There's no question that you want more. So that's it.
Okay, well, what movie are we doing next, Marco?
Rope.
We're doing the next movie we'll be reviewing will be Rope, and I want to give a shout out to Steve, 1989, whose YouTube movies we've been watching. He
That's
reviews
not his full
MREs.
name. That's
Huh?
not his full YouTube name.
Oh, it's not. Well,
Mm-mm.
that's what he puts on the videos. But I'm going to look to see if we can find any. He likes to review MREs, meals ready to eat, and see if I can find any German U-boat MREs. Or we did. I think we have looked at a World War II one, American MRE. But I'm going to look and see if he's eaten anything on one of those or gone through one of those kinds of MREs. It's just interesting. So because remember the German, Marco brought up the fact that he was able to, about being the master race, but then he had to have all these tablets and he was saving his sweat so he could drink it
What are you talking
or something.
about?
I don't know what that was.
No.
He had water.
No. He before the storm, he got water from the water breaker and put it in a canteen.
Oh, okay. What
Because
was the thing about the sweat?
They could tell because he was sweating that he had drank
Had
water,
water. That's
which
right.
means that he would sweat.
Right.
See, Safi sometimes looks at her phone and she misses things in movies. It's true.
And Marco likes to play video games while we do a movie review.
It helps me focus.
I don't get that, but whatever. So we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Bye. Guten Tag.
No, auf Wiedersehen.
Guten Tag.
There's a person who's taken German for 4 or 5 years. He can't even remember how to say goodbye in German.
Well, the 4th year was terrible, and the 4th year I regressed to not knowing as much because.
And we're both German. We both have.
Because the teacher stopped teaching German.
Yeah, we have German in our ancestry. We're descendants of Germans, as well as a million other things, but that's one of our descendants. So, bye everybody.
Guten Tag.
Nope.